back in December of 2024, I started an Underhells campaign at our local FLGS Old Guard Games. I did what I always do when I run a Necromunda campaign, and I made a packet. The packet had all the rules for the campaign, so they wouldn't have to buy the Book of Desolation if they didn't want to. I didn't deviate too heavily from what was in the book, but there were some changes that I made. What were those changes? Did the campaign play out how I thought it would? And what would I do differently if I had to run the campaign again? Find out this time on JD in the Sump Sea. Welcome back to JD in the Sump Sea. I'm Jay, and today we're talking about Hive Secundus. More specifically, we're talking about the Underhells campaign from the Book of Desolation. And if talking about Necromunda campaigns and other nerdy hobby minutia is your thing, make sure you pop out that Warhammer and smash that like button. Smash that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our videos. Now, before I get into the video proper, I want to let you know that D and I will be at Adepticon this year. We're going to be there in some capacity every single day of the con. We'd love to meet you, so make sure you pop over and say hi if you see us. We hope to see you there. We'll have more information in future videos. Now, back to the Underhells. The idea behind the Underhells campaign is that each player is making their way from the Dust Wall to Hive Secundus, or what remains of it anyway. To do this, they must either hire an Abyssal Ferryman team and a custom rig, or they must bring their own vehicles and crew to get them across the desolation that is between the Dust Wall and Hive Secundus. Each player must make a choice to be either Archaeo Hunter aligned or Malstrain Genestealer aligned. The decision plays a big role in their initial gang construction, and also how easy it is to re-equip and hire new fighters during the campaign. It also affects how the denizens of Hive Secundus may treat them. One of the most unique things about this campaign is that, as written in the book, the players can't move on from a phase until they, as a group, have acquired enough exploration points. Each of the 6 new scenarios presented in the Book of Desolation award exploration points to the winner and loser of the scenario. Once 3 times as many exploration points as there are players in the campaign have been accumulated by all the players combined, the phase ends, and they move on to downtime. Exploration points are then spent by the players in several ways. They can spend them to make money or to influence which territory they move on to next. During each cycle, each player moves onto a new territory. They roll a d6. They consult the table for the phase that they are currently in, and then that d6 roll determines the new territory they have entered. Unlike a Dominion campaign, they are never holding territory for more than one cycle. Also, these territories are more like territory types and not specific locations. This also means that multiple players can have the same territory. The territories usually provide an income as well as a boon of some sort, like D3 gangers gain infiltrate, or they may get a free hive scum or something similar. Each phase has its own list of territories, so as the campaign moves on, people will continue to experience new territories. Each phase of the campaign also has environmental effects called Madness, Desolation, and Darkness. The environmental effects will affect each player differently depending on whether they are Archaeo Hunter aligned or Malstrain aligned. As the campaign progresses, the environmental effects will get worse for the Archaeo Hunter aligned gangs and get better for the Malstrain aligned gangs. The additional new rules this campaign introduces include roaming horrors, data crystal stacks, Abyssal Ferryman teams in custom rigs, and Trazier pattern sentry guns. The first thing I do when running a campaign is I make a packet. And this packet will cover everything the players need to be able to play the campaign without having to buy the book that the campaign originally was printed in. So what's different about what I did in the packet compared to the campaign as described in the Book of Desolation? Well, the first thing I did was clarify how many games and how many weeks there would be. In the Book of Desolation, it is open-ended, and they chop up the campaign into downtime and phases, and each phase is variable, and each downtime is one cycle. This works well for small groups of players, like 4 or so, who know that they will meet every single week or maybe even several times a week and play a game or 2. The campaigns I've been running recently have been 6+ players. This past summer I ran a campaign with 16 players. When your campaign runs upwards of 6 players, and you play at a game store, you need to really solidify and clarify what a cycle is and what a phase is. And every Necromunda campaign that Games Workshop has ever produced has both cycles and phases. Other changes that I was able to make immediately upon determining cycles and phases was to eliminate the way the campaign progressed. No longer would a phase end when the players acquired 3 times the number of exploration points as there were players in the campaign, because we had a strict schedule to follow instead. The exploration points would still be used for income and for territory manipulation, however. I also changed how challenges work. Because our group is very relaxed and not super competitive, a lot of them are pretty new to the game still. I decided players would just pair off against players they hadn't yet played each week, and then also either roll randomly for the scenario to play, or they could just pick one that was available in the phase they were in. Another change I made was that I added 1 additional triumph, making the total 7 instead of only 6. I also clarified the goal of Slayer of the Malstrain was to take Malstrain Genestealers out of action instead of slain, just so there was no confusion. I also changed Warmonger to the highest winning percentage instead of most games played, since everyone was supposed to play 1 game a week. I'd like to have as many triumphs in a campaign as possible, not because I don't believe in winners and losers, or anything like that, but because it can help a player to build their own narrative throughout the campaign. I like to think of a Necromunda campaign as a story that's being told over a number of weeks. The story is being crafted by the players, with some assistance from the arbitrator. The players are then free from worrying about winning every single game, and can instead focus on things like, say, harvesting the most data crystals, killing the most Malstrain Genestealers, or some other thing that maybe one of the triumphs supports, or something they'd make up themselves. More triumphs that are all at an even level of importance allows players the freedom to explore new wargear, skills, and tactics that they might not otherwise try. For example, if a player wants to focus on harvesting data crystals, they may focus on upgrading their fighters' intelligence scores, since intelligence is required to actually harvest the data crystals. They may also focus on specific pieces of wargear. Items like drop rigs, grapnel launchers, chameleon cloaks, and falsehoods can be very useful in obtaining those data crystals without getting your guys killed, and also doing it rather quickly and unseen. For a while now, we've adopted a specific way of using tactics cards, and it's based off Gilder's Ford Radio's suggestion from a while ago, when they suggested building a deck of cards and then picking the card that you want for the game. So the way we do it is we have everyone build a deck of 12 cards, any cards in the game that are legal for that specific gang that they're playing. Of course, there are a couple exceptions. There are a few cards that we don't have them play with, and there's a small list of those. We make each player build a deck of 12 tactics cards that are legal for their gang to use during the campaign. Then, for each game, they pick 2 cards out of that deck to use. If they use the card during the game, then it is discarded and cannot be used again until the deck is completely run out. They then rebuild the deck with all the tactics cards that were in it originally. If they don't use the tactics card during a game, it goes back in the deck and they can use it again in a future game. We also don't allow duplicate cards. We had a final Week 9 game, and I recommend doing this with all of your campaigns. It's an opportunity to get all the players together in one big game and have one final hurrah. I brought snacks, and we had a really good time. And this scenario actually was based on the urban renewal scenario. And this scenario, we had 5 towers in the center of the board, and everyone took 3 fighters. And I also dispersed 13 Genestealers around the board, and they had to fight the Genestealers and destroy the towers. We basically played until all the Genestealers were dead. So it lasted, I don't know, about 4 hours. It was pretty fun. This past summer with our 16-player campaign, I did something similar. I made 2 similar board setups and had the players split into 2 groups of 8 and play on each of those boards. In the campaign this past fall, we had a dust wall scenario where everyone was racing against everyone else to get to the dust wall. And I even made a battle report, which you can watch on the channel here. But the game we finished this campaign with was quite fun and chaotic. And the triumphs had already been determined before the game began, so there was no worry to keep track of anything that happened during the game. It allowed players to do all sorts of crazy things with their gangers that they wouldn't really do in any other game. We also didn't say that we suspended the bottling rules, but we suspended the bottling rules, so it didn't matter how many of their players or how many of their fighters they lost. They could continue to play the game until they didn't want to. For the trophies, I found these little plastic trophies at a local big box store in November that could represent presents in like a gift exchange at the office or something like that. There was even one that was like best ugly sweater and best white elephant gift. So what I did with those is I took the trophy parts off of the plinths, I put pill bottle tops on top of the plinths and then washers on top of those. I then bought a bunch of gene stealers off of eBay and had my partner and my friend Steph paint them up, and then I put magnets on the bottom of those, had them attached to the plinths via magnets, and those gene stealers were gene stealers in the game that they got to play against and defeat. I gave them the plinth that had the associated triumph they won on it, then they got to pick the gene stealer they liked the most and put it on top of the plinth and use that as a trophy, take that home with them. It was a neat way to end the campaign, and so people could have little trophies and souvenirs of the last battle that they fought. I love the idea of traveling from one place to another in a campaign. I actually ran another campaign this past fall in the Ash Wastes that was the journey from Hive Primus to the Dust Wall. You can check out what I did with that campaign here. I think if I ran this campaign again, it would be more structured and less random. I would start again, of course, by codifying that a cycle is a week, and each player plays one game per week, just like I did previously. However, I would also then make each week a specific scenario that the players play, so everyone plays the same game every week. I would run the scenarios in the following order. Week 1, Escape the Zone. This is a scenario with vehicles, a rolling roads scenario. The gangs are heading away from the Dust Wall and further into the Secundus exclusion zone. It lasts 6 turns or until only one gang is left. It's a decent introduction to roaming horrors and data crystal stacks, with the twist that they are playing a rolling roads scenario. Week 2 is Zone Exploration. This is another scenario that allows vehicles. This game revolves around the players hunting for archaeotech by searching 6 locations on the board. The games end when only one gang is left on the battlefield. I would instead end it after a set number of turns, maybe 5 or 6. Otherwise, someone could just wait until they have even just one more point than their opponent and voluntarily bottle, flee the battlefield, and then win the game. Week 3 is downtime. During our downtime, I had picked out 4 scenarios from all sorts of different books and White Dwarfs, and these are the ones that I picked, and I would use these again in a future campaign that I ran in the Underhells. Number 1 is Dome Rush. A dome runner starts in the middle of the board and is moved by the opposing players each turn, and he drops either loot crates or bombs, and the objective is to get the most loot crates. Scenario number 2 is Takeover. There are 3 objectives held by the defender. They're parts of the battlefield, say towers or wall sections, and the attacker has to grab those 3 from the defender. Urban Renewal, scenario number 3, has a tower or tall structure in the middle of the battlefield. It's destructible, and the players have to destroy the tower, and whoever destroys it and escapes the battlefield is the winner. Number 4 is Tech Raid. This one has 6 loot caskets, and the attacker wins if they come away with 3 of those 6. Then moving on to week 4, I would play Lost in the Ruins. This is the final Ash Waste game, and it has 6 points on the edge of the battlefield that could be an exit. I recommend that more than 1 point could be an exit as long as a 7 is rolled when using the scout action. If the roll fails, then it's not an exit and the exit point is removed. And if there is only 1 exit point left, then it is the only exit. Week 5 would be Underhell's Encounter. This is the first non-Ash Waste game, and I feel like this could be changed to an Ash Waste game if the players wanted to play with their vehicles one more time before really delving into the Underhells. This scenario has random crews of 4 with reinforcements, and it's mainly a game where each gang tries to out-survive the other gang. They're trying to avoid dying from roaming horrors while also killing the opponent. It's an okay premise, but not really that interesting. Adding vehicles can add some spice to this game, but you could probably substitute this scenario with a different one. Zone Exploration and Lost in the Ruins are more interesting scenarios, in my opinion. Then Downtime 2 would happen in week 6. Again, we would have 4 scenarios ready. People can pick the ones that they didn't play last time, and then they can play against new people this time. Or you could do multiplayer games. A lot of those scenarios could be multiplayer games that I listed before. And also downtime games, I didn't mention this, but they don't have roaming horrors or data crystal stacks because the gangs are at settlements narratively, so the normal environment rules would also not apply to these games. Week 7 is Defend the Camp. During this phase of the campaign, the players have actually reached the Underhells of Hive Secundus. They must ditch their vehicles and mounts and Abyssal Ferryman teams. This scenario requires the use of the Trazier pattern sentry guns, a new kit released specifically for the campaign. Now, in our campaign we just ran, I also had a couple of twin heavy bolter sentry guns that are old Forge World models for Imperial Guard. And what I allowed the players to do if we ran out of the Trazier pattern sentry guns was to replace 2 of the Trazier pattern sentry guns with 1 of the twin heavy bolter sentry guns. And that seemed to work just fine. Everybody always had guns when they needed them. The sentry guns are set up along with 4 random other fighters from the Defender and another model designated as a target. The sneak attack rules are in use, and so for the 4 fighters deployed by the Defender, those are the Defender's sentries. The attacker has to move the target off of any battlefield edge. The game, however, doesn't end when that happens. It only ends if either gang has no fighters left. I would modify this scenario so that as soon as the target is removed from the battlefield, the game ends. And then week 8 is Trophy Hunt. This scenario is specifically about killing Malstrain Genestealers and Brood Scum and Tyramites. Again, the game only ends after one gang has completely been wiped out. I really think that this scenario would benefit from a turn limit like 5 or 6 turns. Many scenarios that Games Workshop has made over the years only end when one gang is completely gone. I think it's a shame that so many of the interesting ideas they've come up with for scenarios still, in the end, come down to killing the opponent and not some other condition. As I was editing this video, Damon from Wellywood Wargaming just posted a new video on his YouTube channel. He just announced a Necromunda custom scenario competition. This is the opportunity to create some new custom Necromunda scenarios, ones with alternate endgame and alternate win conditions that deviate from the norm. I'm excited to see where this contest goes, and hopefully I'll be able to add some new scenarios to my repertoire when it's all said and done. I'm going to try and submit a scenario myself, and I hope that you do as well. Now make sure you check out his video, link in the description below. Besides the modifications I already made, I would also change the Madness, Desolation, and Darkness rules. So in my packet there's a chart showing the dates, the phases, the cycles, and Madness, Desolation, and Darkness levels. Then, in a separate chart, there's the Madness, Desolation, and Darkness levels named again, and what those things represent in that phase of the campaign. Then on the next page is the scenario selection table, showing which scenarios are available during which phase, and then the territory selection table below that. I think first I would streamline the Madness, Desolation, and Darkness rules to use the following table instead. Note, gangs can only access their gang's equipment lists and recruit new fighters during the downtime. So as you can see here in weeks 1 and 2, the visibility is 18 inches. For the Archaeo Hunter aligned factions, fighters who fail to rally gain the Insane condition. Trading post rarity is increased by 2, common items are rarity 8. For the Malstrain aligned gangs, fighters have a -1 to nerve tests, rarity increased by 6, and common items are rarity 12. In downtime on week 3, there are no effects. In weeks 4 and 5, the visibility is only 12 inches. Fighters who fail any nerve tests gain the Insane condition if they're Archaeo Hunter aligned. They also would have a trading post rarity is increased by 4, and common items are rarity 10. For the Malstrain aligned, the fighters are unaffected, the rarity is increased by 4, and the common items are rarity 10. In week 6, there's again another downtime with no effects. In weeks 7 and 8, there's only a 9-inch visibility. For the Archaeo Hunter aligned gangs, nerve tests are at a -2, and fighters who fail any nerve tests gain an Insane condition. Trading post rarity is increased by 6, and common items are rarity 12. For the Malstrain aligned gangs, fighters have a +1 to their nerve tests. Rarity is increased by 2, and common items are rarity 8. Also during downtime, all of the normal effects that happen during a normal Dominion downtime happen. So everyone gets 250 credits, anyone who's in recovery recovers, and they can go to the trading post as normal with no restrictions and recruit new fighters if they so choose. One thing I did set also arbitrarily in this campaign was that there would be no alliances unless you made them before the first game of the campaign. The Abyssal Ferryman teams do not count as an alliance in that respect. Also in this campaign, were I to run it again, the scenarios would be set each week, with the arbitrator having the power to change them for a specific game if necessary, so there's no need for the scenario chart anymore. The exploration points become only a stat for triumphs, and also provide D3 times 10 credits that can only be spent at downtime. The territory chart would remain unchanged, or could become the following to make it simpler. Roll a D3 for weeks 1 and 2. On a roll of a 1, pick either the Old Bunker Complex or the Hidden Holdfast. On a roll of a 2, pick either the Abandoned Battlefield or the Abandoned Prometheum Station. On a roll of a 3, pick either the Crashed Stratoplane or the Fallen Crane. In weeks 4 and 5, on a D3 roll of a 1, you get to pick either the Gutted Rig or the Forlorn Way Station. On a roll of a 2, the Girder Forest or the Hunter's Enclave. On the roll of a 3, the Hab Scrap or the Fortified Camp. And then in weeks 7 and 8, on a D3 roll of a 1, you get a Haunted Halls or Thermal Abyss option. On a roll of a 2, you can pick the Collapsed Dome or the Fortified Dome. And on the roll of a 3, the Cogitator Nexus or Xenos Boneyard are your 2 options for territories. The new territory chart still allows options, but eliminates the need to keep track of how many exploration points to affect which territory you pick. So I think with the previous changes I made with a campaign, you would have a smoother experience and would still be rewarding. I found that there was a lot to keep track of when I ran this campaign the first time, and the players were not super interested in keeping track of everything they had to keep track of. By streamlining it as above, the campaign runs much smoother. I've made a new PDF of this new modified Underhells campaign, and it's available to download in the link below. Let me know what you think of this modified Underhells campaign, and have you run an Underhells campaign or played in one yet? If you have, please let me know in the comments below. I'd be really curious to see what you think of the campaign and what you think of the modifications I've made. But that's all I have for you this time. Thanks for watching, and as always, please like and subscribe.